Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us Keenan, who is the founder, CEO, and chief antagonist of A Sales Guy Incorporated, which is a top-tier sales consulting and recruiting firm. Welcome to the program, Keenan.
Hey, thanks a bunch, Mike. I'm looking forward. This is going to be a good time, baby. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and I just love it. You know, sometimes you can tell a lot about people when from the names of, their titles or their company that they choose, and I just love chief antagonist. So I'm sure that there's a definition, explanation, story, or something behind that. So let's start off with what in the world is a chief antagonist?
Yeah, it's a title I sort of have was how do I put this? It's why I've irritated so many people in the corporate world. So, I don't believe you can make change. I don't believe you can move forward unless you're changing things or you're digging in, right? Or you're antagonizing. And we usually look at the word of antagonizing as to tease or to poke fun at, but the real term antagonize, is to agitate, right? Is to move around and to flush, to agitate, right? And I do that because that's how you get to the core of a problem. If you just let everything sit all pretty, you can't improve, right? If you want to remodel your house, you have to antagonize the house, right? I mean, you have to tear it down, move it around, move things around, and it gets uncomfortable for a while. So, it's just sort of how I go about solving problems is I just break them apart, rip them apart, and try to get to the core issues.
I love that idea. I agree with that 100%. And it makes me think in the sales world, I'm sure that you've got a billion stories of how your sales reps that you would train or work with would say, well, I ask people, how we can help them or how you're doing, and they say, we're doing just fine. But the problem is it's 19 layers down, and you've got to get to that, and you've got to ask the right questions and poke and prod and dig to get right to that core problem. And I would even say or ask you, what do you say about when someone goes, oh, well, we're struggling with X? The salesperson should not, rejoice and go, Yahoo, I found the problem. Now here's the solution, because that problem or that response may just be the tip of the iceberg of the true, real problem.
No, you're absolutely correct. I do my best not to ask. Let me rephrase it. I strategically ask yes or no questions. When someone says we're having this problem, I don't just say, oh, fantastic. I say, well, tell me a little bit about it. One of my favorite types of questions are, tell me a little bit about this. Can you explain it further? Can you define that? I mean, one of the best questions ever, someone says, oh, we're having a problem with, increasing sales. We're having a problem with getting our team to, close the deal. And so I go, well, what does that exactly mean? Could you define that? Could you explain that a little further? Right. And when they're done doing that, I say, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And so could you go a little deeper on? Like I just keep asking them to explain themselves some more.
Because so many times they in their mind are thinking of it from their perspective, and they say, well, we're having trouble closing sales. That could mean a whole litany of things. It could mean phone sales, in-person sales. It could mean we don't have the right questions. You could have all of those indications, but when you ask that right question and go a couple levels deeper, then, what does that look like for you and your organization? And they're going, well, here's an example. One time we struggle with, and now it becomes crystal clear. And if you had just launched into your closing 101 objection pitch, solving that problem, you've missed the boat, or you might not have been. They might have been like, okay, good, send me your info, thank you. Whereas if you'd gone deeper and really were congruent with what they needed, now you're relating a whole lot better. So, boy, the power of questions, that's huge.
Yes, I think it's also a bit trite, and we always say the power of questions.
Yep.
And I think there isn't a salesperson on the planet who knows the power of questions. I think that's where the art of sales comes in, is really understanding how to ask the question and what questions to ask, because you can't be prescripted, in my opinion, to really be able to consultatively sell. And that's also trite. But if you really get down to it, I really push my the people I work with to ask themselves, if you left this job, would somebody pay you to be a consultant for the industries you sell in?
Yeah. So that presupposes that you need to be a student of that industry and a thought leader and be an educator and an advocate for the people, in that industry, so that then you're providing really good, solid advice. And, oh yeah, by the way, we sell these widgets and provide this service. But here's what you need to really know and be aware of. And now they're looking at you more of a information provider than a salesperson.
Yes. Unequivocally, yes. No questions.
I was reading recently for about the third or fourth time Bob Burg's book, Go Giver, and one of the points in there is about authenticity. And it's like, well, how do you be more authentic? And it's sometimes you can't teach that, but it's just that mindset of be you. Be a person, be a human, talk to them. And I love that you said, I don't like scripting, because I think that you can look at some scripting responses and ideas just to kind of have a feel for the flow. But at the end of the day, you have to just be a human and talk to people, and that's what they appreciate. So are there any thoughts on kind of that approach of being authentic and just really talking conversationally with people so they don't feel like it's a objection, to some certain closing technique?
Yeah, yes. I think people should be authentic in life in general, to be perfectly frank with you. And I don't think that most people are authentic. I think we've seen a substantial erosion of the formality that has masked authenticity. So for most of the 20th century, authenticity was not what was expected or prized. It was, quote unquote, professionalism, right? So how many people, it was actually you write professionally, and then it's how you write personally. Why were those two separated? Well, because there was this air that was expected. You were supposed to act professional. And so acting professional is not being authentic. It's an alternative, facade isn't the word I'm looking for, but, not personality. It'll come to me in a second, but persona, right? Sure. Professionalism is a persona, is it not?
It can be a mask.
Yeah, no. Do you think professionalism is a persona?
I think it could be.
So, if professionalism, okay, it could be. So, to go a little further, when isn't it, or why don't you think it is a persona?
Well, I would say that it is a persona when you feel like your audience needs it to be. So you're putting on something like what maybe the thought came to me with is the mask, and you're putting on one mask in front of one audience and another mask in front of the other, and maybe you are using kind of relaxed languaging in front of another audience, so that professionalism could easily be a persona.
Yes, there you go. You just said it, right? You're changing how you behave based on the audience, right? So you're not being authentic. You're allowing the audience to dictate who you are. So from that perspective, I don't buy into authenticity. Where I do buy into authenticity is the authenticity of the goal, right? So in other words, am I trying to sell this for me so I can make quota, or am I trying to sell this for you so that you can improve your business, you can be more competitive, you can reduce costs? Like, what is my authentic motivation for selling what I'm selling? That's the authenticity that I think really matters the most, and that I buy into, where you need to be authentic, right? It's, what is the motive of my call? What is the motive of my sales engagement? Am I selling for me, or am I selling for you?
Yeah, that's a huge point. It gets down to that, value-based and serving and, putting the needs of others before yours. And I think that when you couple that with what we were talking about earlier, education-based selling, like in Ultimate Sales Machine, that teaches in just that whole idea where if you're doing these things, just a little bit of a better improvement in each of those areas, your prospect feels it because they're talking to other salespeople, even competitors of yours. And when they are not doing these things, you come off so much more authentic, real, however we want to phrase that. And then people just feel like they can open up, and maybe you get to that sales problem a lot easier because they can tell, this guy really is, he's different. Can't put my finger on it, but he's asking some cool questions, and he's got a really good response, and he's not pushing me, and he's not, asking for the order 2 seconds in.
No, so you're absolutely right. Like, when you think about it, you're not asking for the order 2 seconds in. But you know what? If you're truly authentic in your motives, you might push. So, an example I like to say is you see a person who is about to walk off the edge of a cliff, right? And you yell to that person and they don't stop. And then you sit up a little forward and you see that they're still walking closer to the cliff. So you yell louder and they still don't stop. So then you stand up and you start walking towards them and you scream at them, hey, stop. And they still don't stop. Right before they get to the edge of the cliff, you're going to grab them. Are you not? Are you not?
Yeah, you know what, though? That presupposes that you probably have walked up the mountain with that person, developed some rapport, some authenticity, and they're probably...
No, it doesn't. You may have never seen this person in your life. This person may want to kill themselves. This person may want to jump off the cliff.
Okay, all right, I'll go with that.
What this presupposes is the authenticity that you don't want them to hurt themselves. You are thinking about them.
Because it's not going to hurt you necessarily. I mean, you wouldn't like to see that, but you're not doing it for any selfish motive. You're saying stop.
Yes. And so even grabbing them, which is a social no-no, you don't touch somebody. You've even crossed a social norm because you are so concerned about their well-being from your perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So when we are operating from a truly authentic place to give, to care, to share, to improve, we will even push sometimes because we believe that we are helping them. And we're doing everything we can to evaluate if we're truly helping them or not. Right? If this person turned to them, well, I won't take the analogy any further, but that's the difference of this idea from my perspective, what true authenticity is. It's the motive that I operate from. And my objective is to maximize the value that I can deliver to the person I'm engaged with. And if that means I push, if that means I even cross some socially acceptable places, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to help you because I genuinely believe, not that I want the sale, but I genuinely believe that by doing this, I'm going to make your world better. We do that naturally. We do it all the time. Right? People will do things that are outside of the norm if they think they're going to help them. And saving someone's life is a perfect example, right? They will grab somebody. You don't grab people in this world, right?
Yeah, and you know what? That's an example of a tough prospect because that person's not listening to you. Maybe they heard you audibly, but they're not paying attention. They're keeping on walking to the edge of that cliff. So how do you get through to that tough prospect in real life?
So excellent question. You have to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish. You have to know what's important to them and also have to know what their current state is, right? You have to have a very solid understanding of what they're doing today, how they're doing it, why they're doing it that way, the results that they're getting, the impact that it's having on the organization, and then be able to assess a gap analysis, the gap between where they want to go tomorrow. Right, and so if somebody says I'm losing, $1 million a day, or we're flat and our competition is growing at 30% a year, they're starting to take our customers, and you have a product or service that can stop that from happening, and you know why their competition is growing at 20% and they're flat, and you know why they're losing to their competition and their existing customers are going, and you know what impact it's having on your organization, it's causing layoffs, and you know why it exists, and you have a solution, and that customer, and there's no other solution that the customer has other than an internal one is going to cost more money, isn't going to be as effective, etc. And you know all of that, then that's what makes you a salesperson. It's your job to be able to convey that in a manner that will get them to listen.
And all of that presupposes something that these days I would say is so much easier to do than back in the old days of Harvey McKay's, 66 questions, Well, you have to have research. You have to know about someone to know all the things you just mentioned, or at least have a little bit closer clue. So with social media and LinkedIn and all the things we have at our disposal to kind of look at the footprint online of this prospect, you kind of get a feel for that. And then when you can ask those questions, it's definitely something that I feel that people know they should do, but then they don't even do it well, right? They just glance, or they just do it really quick because they can check it off and say, I researched so-and-so.
Yeah, no, most people don't do it too really well. We talked earlier about the idea of questions and the importance of questions. One of the things I like to tell people, questions are important, but I'd rather you get focused on what it is you want to know. Yeah. Rather than writing down the questions you want to ask, which almost feels too scripted or can get you off target, because if the flow of the conversation doesn't go where you want it to go, then the next question in line doesn't line up and you get all flustered, right? What I like to say is, what do you want to know? What information is critical for you to have? And then you can ask that question 6 ways to Sunday. I don't care how you get there, as long as you get there at the end of the day with the information you needed. Right? So you research that, you get it through questions, whatever. Yeah, just start with, what information do I want to have? And then go get it.
It's kind of like, begin with the end in mind. Where do I want to be?
Yes.
Well, if I want to be here, then I need to be here 1 step before that, and here 2 steps before that. And so where am I at right now? Well, I think that's a really good mindset to keep in mind. And then that now illustrates that gap analysis. Hey, Mr. Prospect, after our little small talk chit chat, what's going on? What's happening in your business that we can help you with? And where do you want to be? And what are some things, if you could wave a magic wand, where would you want to be, 6 to 12 months from now? And when they describe that, and then you say, where are you now? Now all of a sudden that clearly articulates that gap. And then, okay, good. Let's close that gap. What have you been doing that's been working, that's not been working? Have you done something that used to work, but then you kind of lost focus on that, and maybe you can go and restart doing that,
So you've made a very interesting statement. And again, this is the art of selling, in my opinion. You asked an interesting question. You said, hey, Mr. Customers, tell me a little bit about what's going on in your organization that we can help you with, right? Mm-hmm. That is, with all due respect, Mike, I know it's your show, but that's a terrible question. Do you know why?
I'm sure you'll tell me.
Because of, like you just said right now, it presupposes that customer knows first of what problem you have, and second that I
but don't you have to start somewhere, though? Don't you have to ask a basic question like that just to see what they're going to say? And it's almost like a leading question test quiz where you ask it and then they kind of answer it and you're like, okay, I thought they were going to say that. Now I'm going to kind of guide them deeper.
So yes and no. So you can. I don't like to combine the questions with my services. I don't like to combine the questions about their current state with the future state. I like to break those apart. So what I might do is, first off, I tell people, we all know what problems our products and services fix, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so let's just have some fun here, Mike. Let's play this out. Give me a product or service that I might want to be selling right now.
That you might want to be selling?
Yes, that I could be selling right now. Give me something to sell right now.
All right. Let's say that you sell press release distribution services to get a company good press and announce activities in a company.
Excellent. Oh, this is a good one. Great. Okay. So the assumption here is, where are we? That I got the person on the phone and they know I'm a press release company, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first question, and I'm going to ask, is in some shape or form like this. Hey, Mike, great talking to you. Listen, I know you were said earlier in the app, in the online forum, and when we set up this meeting, you guys were struggling getting some of the press coverage you wanted. Is that accurate?
Correct. We've tried it, but we don't get any hits.
Okay. Do me a favor. Could you take a few minutes and share with me how you're doing it today? And that's the first question I ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So I what I want to do is, I don't want them thinking about the future right now. I don't want him thinking about how I can help him. What I want to do is, I want him to tell me how he's doing it, because 99% of the time, the problem rests in how a company is doing what they're doing. And the reason they buy your product is because your product does it differently.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is your gap. Right?
Yep.
So when you start telling me how you're doing your press releases and how you get them to the different media outlets and how you write them and blah, 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 I'm going to be able to start to see how you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And then I'll be able to come back and say, this was really helpful, Mike. A couple of things I noticed in what you told me. One of the things you said is, I'm making this up because I don't know much about this industry, is one of the things you told me is that you distribute your press releases via email to these relationships you have. Is that accurate? Did I get that right? And you're like, yeah, I did.
Sure.
Okay. Well, what we found, what we know is based on the internet today and based on the media's being controlled by 4 people, I'm making this up again, that technique doesn't work. And let me tell you why. And I walk you why it doesn't work. What really increases the response rates now is these new marketplaces where the organizations are looking for the best stories possible. But you can't get into those marketplaces unless you have XYZ. Well, we built a da-da-da-da-da. You see where I'm going? So now what I've just done is I've explained why his current solution doesn't work, that if he wants to try to do something different, they're probably not prepared to do it, but guess what? We are. And then I would talk about how by using the marketplace and blah, 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 how it increases the opportunity to get exposure. And then I might talking about how the press releases are written today, and based on how he writes his press releases, I'm not surprised he's not getting the responses because companies use, again, I'm making this up, they use word search engines and Boolean search, which doesn't, which if you're not written a certain way, the best story could be missed. But we understand how those searches work, blah, 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 blah. So notice what I've done here is I've attacked his how.
Yeah.
And then it's just easy for me to lay in my solution.
And then when you are getting ready to describe your why, and they agree with it, and they're kind of nodding their head and giving positive, responses, yeah, that would be a better way to be able to achieve XYZ, then you're asking certain questions so that when they are responding affirmatively, wouldn't it help if your press releases could be seen by whatever, and they're like, yeah, that would be great. Now you're distancing themselves in their own mind from what they're doing, and then when your solution was presented, like, well, you know what, that's what we specialize in. Now all of a sudden they've kind of made the decision because of how they've answered those questions of, yeah, it would be nice if we could do this better.
Yes, and you are now the expert.
Yeah.
You know what they didn't know.
And the big thing that I hear in that is you could have said all that stuff and gone, give me the order. And they were like, good night. We're doing just fine. Goodbye. But you asked questions, and then you went deeper, and then you listened, and you listened, and you listened, and you posed another question about would it help if, and then now that you helped guide them in that mental decision-making process, and then they came to the realization on their own.
Yes, I educated them on how to do their job.
Yeah, right. Hey, so let's wrap up with the final question. Tell me about your book, Not Taught.
Yeah, so Not Taught is a fun book, a really good book. The long and the short of it is I realized about 4 or 5 years ago that what it takes to be successful now is very different than when I got out of college. And with the advent of the internet and social networks and Google searches and everything is right in front of us. And so what we used to do to be successful, what it took to be successful in the 20th century doesn't map to what's required today. And so I broke it down. I broke the whole concept down about how things have changed from the 20th to 21st century. And really the subtitle is what it takes to be successful in the 21st century is nobody's teaching you. And I just teach people. I walk them through, 15 chapters of how to change their personal career development and the things they should be doing to accelerate their career, to switch careers, how to get a job faster out of college, and what the new economy is looking for in their employees and what you need to do to stick out.
And what do you think the main difference is in selling in the 21st century? Does it, I assume, have a lot to do with technology and how you can use that and should use that as one of the kind of tools?
So interestingly enough, this is not a sales book, although salespeople have seemed to gravitate towards it, probably because my audience. It's not a sales book. It's really a success book, or I hate to say self-help. That's a stretch, but it really is a book on success. And, really the key tenet is, look, people, you can demonstrate your competency now.
Yeah.
There are no gatekeepers. So back in the 20th century, if you wanted to publish a book, you had to go through a gatekeeper. If you wanted to be a band and you wanted to be a big band, you pretty much had to go through an agent, right? Someone had to sign you. If you wanted to, switch careers, it was almost impossible because you had your resume, didn't say you did that. You were reliant on your resume, right? I mean, back in the 20th century, you could get in a job, do what you were told, and you could stay there for 20 years. Well, people don't want people don't want to tell people what to do anymore. So if you're still operating from this idea that says, hey, I'm doing my job, expect to get fired soon. They want people who can think, who are creative, who will establish change, not resist change, not just wait to be told what to do, not check in. Hey, I came in at 8 and I left at 5. That's my job. Not anymore. They want people focused on results, right? You just can't do what you're told to do and not deliver results. So it's a whole mind shift.
Yeah.
It's a whole mind shift. And I break down every reason why the 21st century has created this mind shift and what you should do to capitalize on it. Because there's never been a better time to be successful. Never been a better time.
What you just said there makes me think of something that I wonder if is included in your book. So the word comes to mind of entitlement. Do you find that is a mentality these days in this generation of, whatever age group, not 8-year-olds, but, entitlement, like, I'm entitled to whatever, fill in the blank, and then that could stunt you, in that personal development quest that you have.
So it's interesting you say that, yes, but this is the most interesting piece. It's always been there. Mm-hmm. Entitlement has always been there, and I find the conversation today that somehow it's a millennial thing to be ironic because people have. My dad was a baby boomer. I'm a Gen X. The idea of unions, and not unions from back when they were necessary, with the AFL-CIO, or, when there were no child labor laws and no OSHA laws. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking modern-day unions where they created a structure where somebody can't be fired, where the person who's been there the longest makes the most pay, even if they're not the best person. I'm talking about a time, the baby boomers, where pensions were created, where if you stayed some for 20 years, you were paid the rest of your life for not working. I mean, this idea of entitlement has always been around.
Yep.
What you're seeing now is people having a backlash to it. Ironically, those who in many cases were the most entitled, had a job. You could get a job and keep it for 30 years. They're the ones complaining. Millennials who kind of wanted the same thing and they can't have it, but they were complaining. They got let go. So it's always been around.
It's kind of like it's always been around. We're just calling it something these days.
Yes. So to me, this isn't about entitlement. To me, I like to flip the coin. This is about opportunity for those people who want to create and design a life for themselves that meets their expectations or meets their goals or meets their objectives. This book was designed to say, hey, you have more control and more opportunity for your own destiny than you've ever had in your life. Ever had in your life. If you decide you want to be an author, you don't need to send that thing, pitch that thing to you don't have to do what's her name, Harry Potter, what J.K. Rowling did, right? And just go from, help me here with, what are those people called? Publisher to publisher,
yeah.
Yes. Hoping someone picks it up. In today's world, if no one wants to take it, fine, publish it yourself. And people have made millions become bestsellers by self-publishing. If you're that good as a bass player or guitarist, get your butt on YouTube and put something out every day, and you can grow an audience, and you can make money doing it if you're really good. If you want to switch careers, if you want to become the CEO, whatever it is you want to do, there's never been a better time because you have so many tools and so many opportunities that didn't exist. There's fewer gatekeepers and fewer people in your way keeping you from doing it. But you have to work harder than you've had to work too.
Yeah, I love it. I agree with that. And here's a final thought on that proposition. I would say to you that when someone would hear that, they may think, "Oh my word, I've got to do dramatic change, and I can't make." But in reality, it's these 1% shifts and improvements in this area and that area and the next area. Because these 1% shifts done consistently will give you that cumulative effect that you're looking for. You don't feel like you have to change and reinvent yourself tomorrow morning.
No, you're right. You know what's interesting? You don't have to change yourself. You don't have to change yourself tomorrow morning. But what you're going to have to change with few people, not enough people want to hear this, is you're going to have to change. Here's a perfect example. If you're under 45 and maybe even under 55, but you might be able to coast for the last 10 years, your resume is going to be completely null and void in about 5 to 10 years. No one's going to care about resumes, right? And if you can't demonstrate your value through LinkedIn, if you're treating LinkedIn like a resume, you're done. You won't be able to compete with the other person who has been using LinkedIn to connect with other hiring managers in their space who post a Pulse article once a week or once a month on how they do their job. Let's say they're an accountant, how to be a phenomenal accountant, or if they're a salesperson, or let's say even a cleaning lady, how they go about cleaning a home and maximize efficiency and get in and out quickly and clean appropriately and blah, blah, blah. So that when someone comes to hire, they can read about how you do the job, not a list of stuff you've done in the past. Right?
Yeah, and that's kind of, I interviewed Eric Qualman a few months back, and he talks about the digital footprint. And what is your digital footprint? What are people seeing, that's substantive? Not, I went out to XYZ Club last night, but, what are they seeing where you had some thought leadership posts or content on LinkedIn, on wherever, and then that hiring manager or that strategic alliance partner, if you're in entrepreneurship, now would go, ooh, I'm gonna hook up with that guy through LinkedIn and send him a message, and we need to talk about it. That was a good article.
Yes, you will not be able to compete without that in the future, and people aren't getting that. I have one of the quotes in my book is I said, digital obscurity will be the plague of the commoner.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true. So to your point about change, yes, some people are afraid to change, but it's changing around you. Right now, it's still an opportunity, and not much sooner it's going to be the price to pay to compete. Right? So jump on it now and get ahead of the curve, rather than coming in when everybody else is done. I started blogging in 2009. I've been able to get, tens of thousands of readers. And I tried starting that blog 2 years ago. I probably wouldn't have anywhere the number of followers, even if the content was exactly the same. A lot more people competing in 2015 to write a blog as opposed to 2009. Yep. Get ahead of the curve.
Cool. Well, Keenan, I think we could probably continue talking for about another 4.5 hours, and then we could take a breath and talk for another. So let's wrap up with what is the best way that people can learn about your book and your speaking and your products, but mainly kind of get a flavor of your book. What's the best website to send them to?
You can just go to a sales guy, salesguy.com. It's easiest. You get everything there. And then if they're even have a wild hit, they put Jim Keenan into that little funny box on Google. I think I'm almost the entire first page. So rather than spewing out all the stuff they have to remember, just go to a salesguy.com or Jim Keenan in Google, and you'll have more than you wish you had. And you'll have more than enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day. It was really fun getting to know you.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate it. This was a good time. Good question.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.